So shalom, everyone. Welcome to this class. This is based on a new ebook that we wrote on kosher slaughter. It's called A Practical Guide to Kosher Slaughter, Restoring Kosher Slaughter to Jewish Communities. I am in training to be a certified Shechitah, ritual slaughter, according to Jewish law. However, what I'm learning in my program is not what I'm teaching, because what I'm learning is a much higher standard that is common today than what is actually necessary by Jewish law. And you'll understand why I'm teaching something different from what I'm actually learning. Of course, a lot of the things that I'm learning, I'm teaching, but it's not exactly the same. So just a few Hebrew words that I wanted to share is the word aliyah. In this context, in a Kabbalistic view, the word aliyah, it means ascension, right? To go up. And in our context here, it means to spiritually elevate an animal when we consume it the kosher way, okay, for a mitzvah with proper intention. So when we eat kosher meat in the proper way, saying the blessings, etc., Kabbalists say that we are giving the animal an aliyah. We're consuming it God's way. Its soul, the sparks that are trapped within it. And then here's another Hebrew word, bedikat hasakin. This is the required inspection of the Shechitah knife to ensure that it is smooth and free of nicks before and after slaughter. And oops, this is wrong. Okay, just those two little Hebrew words that I wanted to share since we just got done with Hebrew. So anyways, this class is for anyone who would like to uphold the highest kashrut standards in their meat according to Jewish law, not necessarily according to Jewish custom. Okay. Also, small Jewish communities that struggle to access reliable kosher meat. And this is really the reason why I wanted to teach this class, because recently our Beit Din converted a community in India. It's actually a bigger community than ours here in America, but they were very faithful to halakha. They actually all go to the synagogue. Not all, maybe not all, but a large percentage of them go to the synagogue before Shabbat and even sleep over at the synagogue in order to not even drive on Shabbat. And they also have some slaughterers there, but they didn't know the kosher way to slaughter. So they started refraining from eating meat. So they've been vegetarian for a few weeks now, and they really want us to guide them in that. Also, this is for farmers or homesteaders who wish to perform their own shechitah for personal or community use, and also just people who study Jewish law, who study Torah, just Jews who are interested in understanding both the halakhic and practical aspects of shechitah. Okay, just to round out, just to give you more understanding of Jewish law in different areas. And we're going to learn, and the book explains more than this, but these are the basics. The fundamental laws of Shechitah as outlined in the Torah, Talmud, and Mishneh Torah, the 5 invalidating factors of Shechitah and how to avoid them, step-by-step instructions on how to properly perform Shechitah on poultry and livestock, and how to check the knife using the fingernail test, with historical notes on other methods that I don't advise, and the role of women in Shechitah and historical precedents for female Shechetiyot, and the differences between standard kosher and glatt kosher meat, and how modern kosher certification affects or hinders accessibility to kosher meat. Now, I just wanted to start with the benefits, the health benefits of meat, but also kosher meat in particular. Number one, meat is an essential part of nutrition. It provides high quality protein, B12, iron, and omega-3s to support our muscular growth, brain function, and immune health. There's been studies and research that shows that people who do not eat meat can have mental health issues, higher incidence of both suicide, homicide, and even accidental death without regular meat consumption. So it's very important for mental health and cognitive benefits. It can help prevent fatigue, brain fog, and mood disorders by supplying key nutrients like B12, iron, and choline. And kosher shechitah and clean meat ensures that only healthy animals are slaughtered, reducing the risk of disease and contamination. And melicha and tzliya, which we'll talk about later, methods for drawing out the blood, salting and roasting. This also helps to draw out impurities and potential pathogens, and also balanced meat consumption. Not eating too much meat, but avoiding veganism, and choosing good quality unprocessed meat and avoiding overindulgence is also very important. There was a holistic doctor by the name of Dr. Hulda Clark. She's no longer with us, but she was very much into parasite research and cancer cures. And she had a laboratory where she tested all kinds of different meat and other things. But one of the things that she tested in her laboratory was different types of meat. And she found that only kosher meat, according to her research and studies, only kosher meat was free of parasites, which she also believes parasites are the key factor to disease. So lots of benefits to meat, but also kosher meat in particular. And Shechitah from the Torah is derived from the verse in Devarim, or Deuteronomy 12:21, where it says, "You shall slaughter from your cattle and your sheep as I have commanded you." Now, there are no specific instructions on how to slaughter cattle and sheep. So in Judaism, and the Rambam states in the Mishneh Torah that there are, if I remember correctly, that there are 33 laws in the oral Torah that are derived directly from Sinai, that were communicated orally from Sinai. And I also believe visually. I believe that Hashem communicated these things to Moshe both orally, but also visually, regarding how to slaughter animals, because it's really something that is very much a lot easier to do visually, not just orally. And so this class is going to be very incomplete because we're going to mostly be talking about the laws. However, it's a basic. It's the basics. I will try to do additional classes or find videos to help with that. There are videos that I have access to, but they're in all Hebrew, so I have to figure out how to explain them in English. So Rambam says that there are 33 laws that are part of the oral Torah that were communicated directly from Hashem on Sinai. The rest of the oral Torah was not given that way. It was developed by the Sanhedrin as the needs arise. They were rulings based on issues that were brought up to the Sanhedrin through time. Okay, but when it comes to the laws for Shechitah, these were given to Moses from Sinai, according to Rambam, according to Judaism. Now, two more important words when studying Shechitah. Number one is nevela, which literally means carcass, and this refers to an animal that has died without Shechitah. So a carcass is something, an animal that died without having proper kosher slaughter performed on it, such as one that has perished naturally from old age, for example, or let's say it was injured in an accident and that it could not survive, or some kind of disease. Okay, it dies on its own. It is nevela. And then the second important word is trefa. and this means literally torn. And in the Torah, it refers to an animal torn by another animal, a wild animal, with a fatal injury or defect that would cause it to die within a short amount of time. So it was attacked by a wild animal. Okay, so trefa, torn, nevela, carcass that died of itself. Now, a trefa would eventually become a nevela if it's not eaten by the wild animal, right? It would eventually die by itself. So basically, we don't want to eat an animal that would die of itself. We want to eat a healthy animal, okay? And I think that's really the key to understanding to understanding what is proper shechitah. Well, that's part of it, anyways, an important part of it. So the obligation to perform a kosher slaughter comes from Devarim, chapter 12:21. This shows us that animals must be properly slaughtered for their meat to be kosher or fit to eat by a Jew or an Israelite. Other laws include Vayikra 22:28, not to slaughter a mother and its offspring on the same day. Okay. Also to cover the blood after slaughter, but this only refers to non-domesticated animals, wild animals, and also poultry. And also the prohibition against eating blood from Vayikra, Leviticus 7:26. And this is why melicha and other things are required. And we'll cover that more later. Now, understanding proper shechitah is important today because it helps communities that don't have access to kosher meat, or even people who can't afford kosher meat, but raise their own animals to have kosher meat. So if people are poor, but they have their own animals, or if they live in isolated communities, and also it makes kosher meat, the more people understand the skill, the more kosher meat becomes affordable. And also it's important because it's important for Jews to uphold, number one, higher personal standards of kashrut, but also to revive essential Jewish skill in order to foster self-sufficiency. And also, whenever you industrialize something, it makes it so that the standards, even if they are following kosher, halakhic standards, it becomes, mass shechitah, industrialization. It just it fosters poor and inhumane practices, which have been highlighted in news in modern times. The horrible circumstances that some kosher slaughtering agencies have been found doing. I'm not saying they're all like that or they're still doing that, but it does happen. So the more we become independent, the more we understand this skill, the less we avoid those types of corruption. So now let's go into the halakhic qualifications for a shochet. The Mishnah, which is the portion of the Talmud that was the rulings of the last great court, the last Sanhedrin. So the Talmud is comprised of the Mishnah and the Gemara, and the Mishnah is a smaller part of the Talmud, but it is the authoritative part of it. And the Gemara is actually commentary to the Mishnah. It has no authority of its own, but the Mishnah is are the actual rulings of the last great court. And in the Mishnah, it states in Chulin 1:1 that everyone may slaughter, and their slaughter is valid, except for a deaf-mute, an imbecile, and a minor, lest they ruin the slaughter. Now, the Rambam in Mishneh Torah, Hilchot Shechitah 4:4, interprets this to mean that anyone who is an expert in Shechitah and has slaughtered in front of scholars until they determine that he is skilled, he is called a mumche, or an expert, and all experts may slaughter even without supervision, including women and slaves. But that is in addition to the actual Mishnah. The Mishnah doesn't say that at all. It doesn't say you have to be an expert. It doesn't say that you have to slaughter in front of scholars until they determine that you're good enough. It doesn't say that at all. That is Rambam's extra addition. And he actually does not have any halakhic authority except for if we give it to him, which some communities have, like the Yemenite Jews. But when it comes to actual legal authority, as given by Torah, that was only given to the last great court, and their words are in the Mishnah. So again, the Mishnah says that everyone may slaughter, and their slaughter is valid except for a deaf, mute, imbecile, and a minor, lest they ruin the slaughter. Now, the Torah itself refutes the notion that expert guidance is always necessary with its clear declaration in the Torah, Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 11 to 14, where it says, "For this commandment that I command you today is not too difficult for you, nor is it far away. It is not in heaven. Rather, it is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart to do it." And this is essentially the principle, the Torah principle by which everything we do at Benei Avraham, we follow this principle that the Torah is not too hard to do. You can do it, which is why we teach the minimum viable halakha. This is also, by the way, how to execute, start a business. You don't have to have everything perfect and to start a business. You have to have a minimum viable product in order to get things going. And this is this is also what's necessary to start a Jewish community. Minimum viable halakha. Yes, we can grow in our observance and we can adopt minhag, custom, and higher and stricter standards as we go, but we don't have to know everything and be perfect to start. Okay, this is our principle that we follow, the main principle that we follow, halakhic principle at Benei Avraham. So again, now we're going into the Talmud, not just the Mishnah. It says in Zevachim 31b that women may slaughter, very explicit now, women may slaughter even lechatchila, from the outset, meaning it's not like, oops, oh, you're a woman, oh, well, I guess it's okay. No, the Talmud says even from the outset, lechatchila, it's okay for women to slaughter. And this ruling was even followed by the Shulchan Aruch, Yoreh De'ah 1:1, which states everyone may slaughter, even women and slaves. Now, slaves, could never be considered an expert, a scholar, right? But yet they can even slaughter, right? Now, moving on, the five, and I'm sorry that I spent, 2 slides on this, but for me, it's very important because what's very common in Judaism today is that women are not allowed to slaughter, and that's a later historical development, but Jewish law actually allows it. Okay, that's why it's important to me as a woman to state that. Now, this is also a very important part. The 5 invalidating factors of Shechitah. Number 1, shehiyah, or pausing during the cut. Number 2, dirasa, pressing or chopping instead of slicing, basically performing the Shechitah through force instead of slicing because of the sharpness of the knife. Halada, or concealing the knife. Hagrama, cutting in the wrong location. And ikur, which means tearing instead of cutting. And we'll go into each of these more. Let's go into the first one more, shehiyah, or pausing during the cut. So the cut must be continuous and uninterrupted. There is a myth that says that the shechitah has to be done in one fell swoop, one motion. That is incorrect, but it should be continuous. There should not be pauses. If the slaughterer pauses mid-cut, supposedly even momentarily the shechitah is invalid. Now, this applies whether the pause is intentional or unintentional. If the knife gets stuck or hesitates for even a moment before completing the cut, the shechitah is disqualified. And the solution is to maintain a steady, smooth slicing motion until the required structures, the trachea and the esophagus, are completely severed. I would liken this to like a violin, like a violin, it's supposed to be smooth. I mean, there are violin strokes that are like purposefully kind of staggered, but it should be that continuous, flowing type of violin movement, right? Not with no pressure, right? It's just the back and forth. If there's any violinists, if you could relate, I'm not sure. I played a little violin when I was a child. So anyways, Sephardic and Yemenite traditions historically follow the Talmudic ruling that actually allows for a brief pause, provided that the cut still remains smooth. However, Ashkenazic tradition follows a stricter approach where any hesitation invalidates the shechitah. So if there's any hesitation or pause, they just throw away the whole, and not throw away, but basically render the whole entire animal as unfit for kosher consumption. So obviously, if you're new, you might have a brief pause, and I would say that halakhically, it's actually okay. Although you do want to strive for that uninterrupted pause, and if you do pause, it should be very brief as possible. I would say that the knife should still be on the animal. It should not be pause doesn't mean lifting the blade. Pause just means like whatever, just a very brief pause, as brief as possible. We're not trying to pause, that's for sure. Okay, but basically, the cut should be uninterrupted, going back and forth as smoothly as possible until the trachea and the esophagus is completely cut. Number 2 is derasa, or pressing or chopping instead of slicing. We're not supposed to apply excessive pressure. We're not supposed to chop the trachea and the esophagus. The knife must be drawn back and forth in a sawing motion, and we should not be pressing down forcefully or chopping the trachea and esophagus. This would invalidate the shechitah. So if the slaughterer cuts with excessive force rather than a smooth or gliding motion, then again, the shechitah is invalid. The blade should be used lightly. There should be light pressure on the blade with even controlled strokes rather than hacking at the neck. So the sharpness of the knife is extremely important. And that means that all the knives in my kitchen would probably not be fit for kosher slaughter because people are always telling me that my knives are very dull. So this derasa, this ensures that the animal does not suffer unnecessary pain and that the cut is precise and kosher. And also, now a single stroke is preferred, but multiple back and forth motions are allowed as long as there's no stopping or hacking. And personally, in my training, I've never seen anyone perform a shechitah with a single stroke, especially not with cattle. I mean, maybe for chickens, but I haven't seen that yet. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but that is a myth that it should be one stroke, and especially it doesn't have to be that way for especially the larger animals. Now, the third disqualifying factor is halada and wild games. So someone asking a question about wild game such as deer. Everything here applies to wild game and deer as well. I do have something extra to say about hunting, but I don't want to mix that with this class. That'll be a separate class because this class is already as controversial as it can probably be. So I don't want to add to the controversy by talking about hunting in this class. but I do have some information on that. I won't cover hunting here, but yes, deer. This would apply to deer as well, and wild game. Halada, concealing the knife. The blade must be completely visible throughout the cut. If it is covered by skin, wool, fur, or any other obstruction, the shechitah is invalid. And I was wondering at first when I learned about this, I was wondering, does that mean that we have to shave the hair or the feathers? And the answer is no, but they do. I have seen people, they'll wet the area and then kind of comb it back with their hands, like press it down with their hands so that it's more visible where it's being cut. Okay. And the knife must be positioned in full view, ensuring that the shochet maintains control and precision. So this also prevents accidental deviations that could cause an improper cut. Now, the truth is, from my training, it's usually not done by a person who is alone. It's usually done with multiple people. In professional settings, there's one person who does all the cutting and another person who his main job is to check the knife afterwards. So shochetim avoid halada, or concealing the knife, by smoothing aside the wool or feathers before cutting, and not necessarily plucking or shaving. Although, I mean, I can understand if it's very long and you feel like it needs to be shaved, like maybe especially for sheep or something like that. It can be done. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it doesn't have to be done. Also, hagrama, this is the fourth disqualifying factor, which means cutting in the wrong location. The incision, the shechitah must be made in the proper halakhic region of the animal's throat. Basically, it's right around the middle. Can't be too high near the jawbone, and it can't be too low past the permitted area, or else it's invalid. Now, Rambam's Mishneh Torah specifies that the valid cutting zone is between the upper end of the esophagus and the base of the neck before it joins the chest cavity. He is very specific, I think, because he was a physician. If the incision is outside this range, then the shechitah does not meet Torah standards. And, some knowledge of anatomy and hands-on practice can help ensure this, but it's really not that hard. Try to get it in the middle, basically, okay? And ikur would be the fifth disqualifying factor, which means tearing instead of cutting. The trachea and the esophagus, the kaneh and the veshet, must be severed cleanly without tearing or ripping. And this is where, again, the sharpness of the knife is very important. It shouldn't be done at an improper angle, not with excessive pressure, as we mentioned before, and it shouldn't tear. It should be sliced. Also, the cut must be made cleanly and smoothly without excess force, again, or dragging of the blade. And this is why the knife or the khalaf must be razor sharp and perfectly smooth before each use. And this is also why in modern slaughterhouses, the knife is checked after every single, and before, but in between all the slaughters also of each animal. And the risk of ikur is highest if the shochet is rushing or applying too much downward force instead of a controlled slicing motion, but also the sharpness of the knife. Okay, so here now we'll go into the step-by-step guide to performing the shechitah. A general rule is that the blade should be at least twice the width of the animal's neck, and this would allow for like longer gliding strokes. Okay, not necessarily a single one, but uninterrupted. Okay, and not a single stroke, but a single, without pauses. So twice the width of the animal's neck. Also smoothness. So twice the width of the animal's neck, but also you don't want it also too big for the animal. So I actually have one for fowl. I have one for small livestock like sheep and goats, and also one for cows, and bigger sheep and goats. And then the one for sheep and goats can also be used for bigger fowl like turkey, for example. So it should match the animal, the size of the animal. If possible, okay? There's actually nothing halakhically that says, oh, if it's not that size, then it's invalid. But it just makes things easier if you go by that guideline. Also, the smoothness, the blade must be perfectly smooth without any nicks or roughness or imperfections. And even the smallest flaw can cause tearing and instead of slicing, which invalidates the shechitah. Now, the Mishnah actually says that the material that you use to slaughter the animal can be anything. It can be bone, it can be glass, it can be metal, it can be anything. That's not what's actually done. I'm just saying that, if you were stuck on a deserted island and all you had was, I think in the Talmud it actually says, if all you have is like the bone of another animal to perform slaughter with, that you can use it. You just have to make sure that it's sharp enough. So in case anyone ever gets stuck on a deserted island, you can get the carcass of another animal and sharpen it and perform Shechitah, kosher Shechitah that way. Okay. But in general, you probably don't want to do that. You probably just want to use a very sharp knife. Okay. And customarily, rectangular knives were used with no are used, not were are. These are how Shechitah knives look like today. They kind of look like a butcher's knife, I guess. They are completely flat. They're not curvy at all. And the reason for this is because if they were flat, you couldn't just go back and forth in one motion. You might have to, angle it a little bit, or you might feel like you have to apply pressure or things like that. So they're usually just very flat. Now, if you don't have a super flat, straight edge knife like this, that doesn't mean that you can't do it. Okay. It just means that it's not a standard knife. Here, this is what I was talking about earlier. The Mishnah actually says in Cholin 1:2 that one may slaughter with anything that cuts, whether it's metal, this is Talmud Bavli now, whether it's metal, stone, reed, which is plant material, or glass. Okay. Just as long as it's completely smooth, it's not splintered, it doesn't have any cracks or imperfections. Okay. Now, okay, one more. This is in the book, but I didn't put it. I thought I put it in the slides, but I didn't. So, there are 3 ways that I know of that you can check the sharpness of the knife. I suggest doing it with your fingernail. So you take your fingernail and you run it down the blade. So let me go with that. So you take your fingernail and you run it down this blade right here, and you try to see if it gets caught, if there are any nicks on the blade where your fingernail might get cut on. Now, there's also 2 other methods that are mentioned in Jewish literature, which is checking it with your finger, which I think that's not smart, and also your tongue, which is even more, I think, risky. So I do not advocate for those. Just your fingernail is good enough. Okay. Anyways, okay. Next, positioning the animal. Small birds are held firmly with the head extended. Larger birds, like turkeys, for example, may require an assistant for stability. So you're supposed to extend the neck of the bird. Oftentimes this is done, I would say usually it's done with the animal laying down, laying back, so that it's actually comfortable that way. It's a lot more calm that way, and then you press its jaw, up, so that the neck is extended. Even poultry, yes, I see that happening, yes.
Backwards.
Okay, so sorry, Ahav is saying that. Wait, can you say that again? Can you say that in the mic? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So, good.
They can't hear her really.
Oh, can you come over here? I'm sorry, they can't hear you on that mic, because we're using this. We're using the podcast mic to record this. Go ahead.
I have a friend who her dad does kosher slaughter, and I was over at the farm because they have a farm. And when they were teaching the class, and so they had the chickens, and they would hold their wings in one hand, and then they take their other hand and grab the head and then pull it back down to the hand that was holding the wings, and then hold all of that with just one hand, and then they use the other hand with their knife to cut the neck. But the neck was like pretty bent, like kind of curved. It wasn't flat.
So you're saying they weren't laying down?
No, they weren't laying down. The people were standing holding the chicken doing that.
I don't really mean laying down, but I from what I've seen is like the chicken is held in one hand
on its back.
On its back. Sorry, laying down is the wrong word to say. That's what you mean as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, okay. So I don't mean laying down like on the ground or anything, but tilted with its back towards the ground.
It's probably a lot harder to do with bigger birds like turkeys, like hold it in one hand.
In one hand, yes. Yes, usually turkeys and also ruminants are, usually it's not done by just one person by itself. Okay, so not laying down, but leaning back is a better way to say it. Thank you, sorry. Okay, and so it's better to, my rabbi says that you should do it with more than one person, but it can be done with, if you don't have another person and you need to eat, it's not a halakhic requirement that another person would be there, but it's just wise to not do it alone and to have help, especially since it might be disqualified if not done properly. So it's better to be careful and get help. Okay, so ruminants require at least one person to hold the body steady while the shochet controls the head and neck. And in controlled environments, a pen or a cradle can minimize the movement and stress, ensuring a smooth and valid cut. I've seen devices where the cow walks into it. This is in industrial kosher farms, kosher slaughtering houses. The cow walks into it, and then the machine grasps the cow, and then it turns it upside down. The machine turns it upside down, and then they do a kosher slaughter. I think this seems kind of scary because a machine is involved, but it ensures for a kosher cut. And however, I think what is not good is I've heard of, when the cows are kind of hoisted up by like a rope or a string or something like that. Yeah, chain and hoist. And that kind of treatment did receive a lot of negative attention. And I think that is no longer practiced because of the bad press with that. Anyways, okay. So there's also, remember, there should be a clear cutting area. The neck should be fully visible, and the fur or feathers or wool should be moved aside. You can shave or pluck it if you need to, but you don't have to. And also avoiding the chalada, concealed cut. So you have to make sure that you can see the knife cutting the whole time. Okay, don't be looking around and doing other stuff or be distracted. Okay. So that's preparing, right? Just preparing to make sure that all of these things are done before you cut. And then when you're ready to do the cut, there's the blessing. The blessing is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu alcha shechitah, which means, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us by his commandments and commanded us regarding the slaughter, or the sacrifice. Hebrew, same word. And it should be done with mindfulness and intention. Now, if you forget to say the blessing, that does not render the shechitah invalid. It just means that you made a mistake as a Jew. You don't have to redo it. You don't have to throw away the animal or give it away or anything like that. You can still eat it as long as as everything else halakhically is done correctly. Okay, then you make the incision. You should do it swiftly, not carelessly swift, but uninterrupted swift. Okay, in order to do it as fast as you can to minimize the pain of the animal, smooth and uninterrupted. Make sure to sever both the trachea and the esophagus. A single motion, not a single stroke, but a continuous single motion should sever the trachea and the esophagus. Now other people might not say this, but if you cut more than the trachea and the esophagus, it does not render it unkosher. Some people will say it does, but that's not what that is not halakhic. It doesn't say that in the Mishnah. But you have to at least sever the trachea and esophagus. If you do not sever both of them and then you stop, then it is not kosher. Okay, you have to get those two things, the trachea and the esophagus. You have to avoid the rasa, so no chopping, no pressing down with excessive force. And you have to cut in the right location, right in the middle, not too high near the jawbone or too low toward the chest cavity. And if you cut past the trachea and the esophagus, it does not invalidate the shechitah. It's okay, but you have to at least cut them, okay, before stopping. Then you have to check. You have to confirm that the shechitah has been done properly. Make sure that the veshet and the kaneh, the trachea and the esophagus has been fully severed. You have to, and this is usually done by another person, okay? They have to verify that it was done. They have to verify that they saw the knife the whole entire time and it was not concealed or couldn't be seen, and that it was done at the proper place on the animal's neck, and that it was clean and smooth without tearing, ripping, things like that, because of the knife wasn't sharp enough or used too excessive of a force, etc. So this is usually done by another person if possible. If another person is not there, if it's not possible, then I'm not saying it's not done properly, but it's better to have help. Okay. And then we have to check for trefot. And the main thing that we have to check for is the lungs. According to the Mishneh Torah, the lungs have to be fully inflated, free of holes, and without significant adhesions or sirchot. And so beyond the lungs, like checking the heart or the liver or stomach or intestines for holes, missing sections, etc., it's actually you don't have to do it, but if you see that there's something, if you happen to see that there's something wrong with other organs, then you should check, like if it's diseased or something like that. But the only thing you have to purposefully check, the main thing, is the lungs. You can presume that it's healthy otherwise, so long as there's no holes in the lungs or adhesions. Now, for personal shechitah, you don't have to do more than that. But of course, in industrial kosher slaughterhouses, they'll do more. Ashkenazi tradition allows you to remove sirchot or adhesions on the lungs. If they're easily removed, it's still kosher. In Sephardic tradition, if there's any, even if they can easily be removed, it is not kosher. And so, if it's your own animal, if you can easily remove the adhesion on the lung, it is kosher. Okay, you don't have to follow the extra stringency. Typically, the presence of the adhesions or sirchot means that the animal did have some kind of defect on the lung that it healed from or is healing from. But the fact that it has the sircha instead of a hole is actually a good thing. It actually means that it was healing. Okay, so you can blow into the lungs with something like some kind of tube or straw. You can also use something to blow it, something like a pump or something like that. To check for sirchot, you can just feel the lungs for something sticky between the lung tissue and surrounding areas. And if you can easily remove it, then just remove it. And if the lungs remain inflated with no leaks, they are presumed kosher. Otherwise, if the lungs have holes, then it is presumed to be not kosher. So when you do blow in it with the tube, make sure that when you're blowing that it is sealed off in every other place except for the tube that you're blowing into it with. Okay. All right. So you can use a hand pump or a bulb syringe if you don't have a tube to blow it into with your mouth. Okay, and I just mentioning this earlier. What's an adhesion? A sircha is a sticky fibrous attachment that forms between the lung and surrounding tissues due to an infection, inflammation, or past trauma. And they form in response to a respiratory illness or injury, and eventually harden over time. And they're checked to see if the animal has lung disease, which can potentially rendering the animal trefa or non-kosher. But not all adhesions disqualify the meat. Okay. So again, if you can remove the sircha easily and it doesn't cause a hole in the lung when you remove it, then it's still kosher. Okay. If when you remove the sircha, the adhesion, then it causes a tear in it and thus a hole, then it's not kosher. Okay. Yes, okay. So I already explained the differences between the Ashkenazic and Sephardic tradition regarding that. Okay, number 6, then we have to drain the blood properly. You have to make sure that the poultry, for example, is held down, slanted on a sloped surface. And for wild animals, make sure that the cut is facing downwards so that it drips down onto loose earth. And you should continue to drain it until the blood stops flowing. And you can tilt the head of the animal or move it around to make sure that there's no obstructions and until it fully stops flowing, even from slightly different angles. Okay, don't press on the wound in a way that restricts natural blood flow. Okay. And once the steady stream of blood stops, then you can perform kisui hadam, and or you can wait, just wait until not just right when the steady stream stops, but wait a little bit, and then you can perform kisui hadam. And what is required to be covered is the blood that has gathered on the ground. If the blood has absorbed into feathers or fur, you don't have to worry about that. Okay, only that which drops down to the ground. Now, the practice of kisui hadam comes from Leviticus chapter 17, verse 13, where it says, "If you will snare a wild beast or a fowl that may be eaten, you shall pour out its blood and cover it with earth." Now, we definitely want to drain the blood of all animals that we eat, but we only have to cover the blood for wild beast or fowl. That means for domesticated cattle, livestock, cows, goat, sheep, if they're domesticated, we don't actually have to perform kisui hadam. Getting rid of the blood in a different way is okay. Let's say washing it out or something like that, rinsing it out or something like that. But if it's both fowl, so chicken would be included, or wild beasts like deer or another kosher animal that can be eaten, then you do have to do it. You have to cover the blood with loose earth, sand, sawdust, or fine dust, something natural. Okay. And if natural earth is not available, then it can be prepared dirt that you have there in advance. And before you do it, because this is a Torah commandment, we say a blessing. Again, the standard formula for the blessing. And then al kisui hadam. And we should cover the blood completely and sprinkle enough earth or dust to fully conceal the blood, ensuring there are no more visible traces that remain on the ground. And again, this only applies to birds and wild animals, not to domesticated livestock, cows, sheep, or goats. Okay, you don't have to do it for those types of animals. If you do it for those types of animals, just don't say the blessing. Okay, blessings are for things that are commanded, that are mitzvot. Okay, next is nukur, or removing the forbidden fats and veins. Now, according to my Shechitah rabbi, that's a whole nother class that I have to take just to learn how to remove these forbidden fats. So after Shechitah, there are certain forbidden fats, chalev, and the sciatic nerve, gid hanasheh, which have to be removed before the meat can be eaten. And this is from Vayikra 3:17, Leviticus 3:17, which prohibits certain fats around the kidneys and intestines. It's not all chalev, it's not all fat, just certain fats around the kidneys and intestines. And this applies only to cattle, sheep, and goats, and not poultry. The sciatic nerve, gid hanasheh, is in the hindquarters, and it's forbidden for us because of Bereshit 32:33, when Jacob wrestled with the angel, and its removal is very complex and requires specialized training. So what most shochatim do, slaughters do, is they just avoid the hindquarters entirely, and you can sell it to a non-Jew to eat, so you don't lose money from that, or feed it to your animals. Okay, but for those, so if you are trained in removing the chalev, and I can't speak to that, it's better to just discard those questionable sections. Okay, or sell it to a non-Jew. Vayikra,
No chaleb in the front, right?
right? It's in the back. It's in the hind.
Okay.
Oh, and the organs. Sorry, there's no the chalev are on the kidneys and intestines. Okay. Now, you shall not, in Vayikra 7:26, it says you shall not consume any blood, whether from a bird or an animal, in any of your dwellings. And so the meat contains blood within it, and it is forbidden to cook or eat it unless the blood has been removed through salting or roasting. That's from Rambam's Mishneh Torah. Now, the first way that we get rid of excess blood, so we've already drained it, right? We have to drain it first, but then there's still blood there that we have to get rid of. So, and historically, the slaughterers, the butchers would do the first part, and then they would sell the animal the same day that it was slaughtered, and then even women would go to the butcher, buy meat, and then they would do this part by themselves at home, what we're about to talk about. These days, everything is done before it's sold on the market. But not too long ago, it was very common for Jewish women even to do this at home. This is called melicha, salting the meat. And basically, we start by rinsing the meat in cold water and soak it for 30 minutes before salting to remove the surface blood. This is now from Mishneh Torah. And we apply the salt evenly every place on the meat that we can, all the surface of the meat. And you put it on a slanted surface so that the blood can drain down, and let it drain for an hour to extract the blood. And then you have to rinse it 3 times after salting it to ensure that all the salt and extracted blood are fully removed. So this further removes the impurities. And any pure salt is kosher for melicha. It does not, now I know this is another controversial thing. It doesn't have to have a kosher label, and it doesn't have to be coarse salt. And this is the ruling of not my Shechitah rabbi, but one of our rabbis says this. Coarse salt was all they had back in those days, but nowhere does it say that it has to be coarse in the Mishnah or the Talmud. This was a later ruling. And I'm not saying don't get coarse kosher salt. But what I'm saying is that if you do not have access to kosher certified coarse salt, do not think that you cannot perform this yourself. Okay. The Torah is for us. The Torah is so that we may live. Okay. Not so that we may be malnourished from not eating meat. Okay. So, as long as it's a pure salt, no additives, it is technically fit or kosher for salting the meat for melicha, even if it's not certified kosher. Okay, actually, certification agencies weren't even around just a few hundred years ago. Okay, so that's a later invention. This whole certification, formal certification. So the Mishnah doesn't give a time limit, but modern customs, later customs, including what's followed today, is that you have to do it within a 72-hour time limit, both melicha and additional rinsing. Okay, that's not actually mishnaic or required by the sages of the Mishnah. Okay, another way to remove excess blood, especially in the liver, is through tzliya. The Mishneh Torah actually permits you to roast instead of salt. So if you don't want to salt it, you only want to roast it, that's okay. The heat will draw out the blood. And liver, if you want to consume liver, it must always be roasted, since it has a very high blood content. And basically, in order to do this, you have to cut the meat into small pieces, thin pieces, and roast it over an open flame, and let the blood drip down so you can't catch the blood and consume it. You have to let it drip down into the fire, and you basically don't want to consume it. Now, also you should be turning it. You should be turning it so that it's fully sealed and all the blood in every angle comes out. And some later customs required roasting meat not salted within 72 hours. So if you didn't salt it within 72 hours, then you had to roast the meat instead of resoaking and salting. Now, extra restrictions on rinsing roasted meat and handling liver developed later as customs, but but it's just in general. You should try to do it within this time frame. You should try to do it right away, really, so as quickly as possible. Okay. Now, the difference. What is glat? Glat means smooth, and it refers to lungs free of adhesions or sirchot. And Ashkenazic tradition permits removing minor adhesions, again, as I stated before, but Sephardic tradition, Beit Yosef, glat, does not. And all the kosher meat, from my understanding, from my classes, all the kosher meats sold in the meat market today is glat. I'm not sure how true it is, but that's what my rabbi says. And it's Beit Yosef glat. It's the strictest standard. It's just usually just how Judaism goes. It's just the strictest standards usually just becomes the what's mainly followed by most. The Mishneh Torah doesn't require glat. It allows kosher meat as long as lung adhesions can be removed without damage. And this is taught by my modern Orthodox rabbi as well as my Breslov rabbi, even my Shechitah rabbi. And glat became standard because of marketing and industrial efficiency and social pressure, even though non-glat meat is actually halakhically valid. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. Now, the impact of glat on kosher meat access is that it has increased the costs, limited availability, and led to a lot of waste, which is okay if you are a big industrial farm, but if you're a small community or a small farm, or if you live in isolation, you can't afford to waste basically 5/6 of all kosher slaughter, because that is the actual ratio. Is that only, I think it's like
1 out of 6 animals.
I think it's 1 out of because of the crazy stringencies. Now I did write it in the book. Maybe I can just maybe I just read it. I think it's like 1/3 of all animals slaughtered are rendered kosher. Only 1/3. Imagine you have to slaughter 3 animals in order to get only 1 to eat. That is very wasteful. Yes, only 1/3 of the meat is deemed kosher. And after removing the back half of the animal, this is reduced to just 1/6 because you're getting rid of basically half of the animal. Yes, it's very wasteful. And it's fine if you're an industrial farm, but if you're not, this is why I'm not teaching what I'm learning, because this is not, it's, I'm teaching you just the minimal. Okay, just the minimal. Anyways, okay. Next slide.
Yeah.
What? Glut is the standard, though. According to my Shechitah rabbi, glut is the standard of all the slaughterhouses that sell meat to stores today, and that only 1 out of every 3 animals are rendered a kosher slaughter, and then they cut out the back half unless they have a properly trained shochet to remove the chalev, which means that only 1/6 of all of the kosher slaughter is actually edible by Jews. That is not sustainable for a home farm. Okay, now let's talk about special cases in Shechitah. Slaughtering large livestock. Again, I mentioned this earlier. They require restraint, ideally in a restraining pen or cradle, so that they can be laid down, or you can't hold them in your hand like a chicken. And there should be at least 2 or 3 people to help. Shechitah of birds can be held by hand, but larger birds, you might need an assistant, and you can smooth their feathers aside. Don't pluck it. Maintain a clear cut. Again, post-Shechitah bird inspection. Unlike mammals, birds' lungs, you don't actually have to check it. You don't have to check them at all. You only have to check the lungs for ruminants, okay, not for birds, not for fowl. Also, there is a general prohibition of stunning before Shechitah, but I would like to say that there are minor opinions that allow stunning. Okay, and I want to say that because, again, just trying to make it more accessible. It's very controversial. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just saying that there are minor opinions that have allowed for stunning. Okay, you shouldn't stun the animal to death, though. However, and you'd still have to, check the animal to make sure that stunning didn't render the animal unkosher in other ways. Let's just say that. Okay. So there are definitely risks to stunning, which could render the meat non-kosher. Nevela, dying of itself instead of through the kosher slaughter. And okay, so one of the reasons why stunning is allowed in some places is because there have been historically, and I don't know if this still applies today, there are some countries that do require stunning by law. And so this is why some rabbinic authorities have allowed it, because otherwise Jews wouldn't be able to eat meat in those places. Okay. But, if you can avoid it, it's probably better. So, Shechitah is a very practical skill, and any knowledgeable and observant Jew can learn it and observe it. You should study halakha and know the 5 invalidating factors. I go into more depth into all of these things in the book. Also, make sure that you properly inspect the knife. Make sure you sharpen the knife thoroughly everywhere where that knife could possibly touch the neck of the animal. And also check for the knife after and check the slaughter after to make sure that it's valid. Before performing a live shechita, you can practice on vegetables, pre-slaughtered poultry or even animal hides, leather. And, it's best to learn from someone who's already done it. And this is why I'm taking formal class and training. I asked permission from my rabbi to do it just after reading the laws. And he said, no, you should really train with someone. I do have a friend though, who was a homesteader, and then he became observant, but he does not live near a Jewish community. So he just read the laws from the Mishneh Torah and started shechting himself. So if you don't have access to someone to help you, I would say just do the best you can, but do try to gain access and to learn. There's a lot of maybe not a lot, but there are resources online, videos and things on YouTube that you can seek out. And I think it's really important to learn and teach Shechitah, to train more Shachatim, to build self-sufficiency, and that we share resources and support local kosher farming. Now I'd like to share just a few insights from Kabbalah and Chassidut, which is that Shechitah allows the animal's energy to be uplifted when its meat is eaten with holiness and used for Torah and mitzvot, meaning the slaughter was kosher, the inspections were made, everything that needs to be done with the blood, etc. And we're not mixing it with dairy, and we are saying brachot before we eat it, and with intention, etc. Right? And that this allows the energy of the animal to be uplifted and used for holiness, so that the animal is not dying in vain or used to fuel, basically, evil, right? And then there's also kavod habriot, respect for creation. The Torah mandates humane slaughter. Okay, this ensures dignity and minimizing suffering, which reflects Hashem's mercy on all creatures. And this is from the Talmud Bava Metzia 85a. And kosher food refines the soul, allowing for greater sensitivity to Torah, prayer, and mitzvot. This is Ramban on Kashrut. And Shechitah is also a symbol of refinement. Sharpening the knife represents personal growth, and draining the blood, removing excess, symbolizes removing excess materialism and refining the soul. And the ultimate purpose of Shechitah and Kashrut is to elevate the physical world, to bring what is mundane into the realm of holiness, and to show us that everything that we do, whether it be eating or drinking, that we can do it for the glory of God. It can be an act of divine service, and we can transform the mundane into holiness. And Shechitah is a mitzvah of precision, ethics, and spirituality. It says in Devarim, and this is a very interesting translation, I believe. It says, when you shall say, I will eat meat, because your soul, your nefesh, that's your soul that's desiring to eat meat, then you may eat meat according to all the desire of your soul, as I have commanded you. Shechitah is more than a technical act. It is a mitzvah that connects us to our food, our values, and our Creator. I think part of the problem, part of the rise of veganism has to do with the fact that we are so disconnected from the animals that we eat, from the life, from its soul. The animals also have a soul. And when we are disconnected from it and we don't understand and respect death, basically, slaughter, then it's very understandable that we see eating meat as a barbarous act. And it shouldn't be seen that way. Shechitah is more than a technical act. It connects us to our food, our values, and our Creator. And Mishlei, Proverbs 12:10, teaches us to be compassionate and mindful towards the food, the animals that we eat. It says there that the righteous person knows the soul of his animal, or cares for the welfare of his beast. And performing Shechitah properly elevates the act of eating, and it turns physical sustenance into spiritual service. And preserving this mitzvah of kosher slaughter keeps Jewish communities strong, healthy, independent, and deeply connected to Torah. And it also helps us to fulfill the commandment where it says, "And you shall be holy to me, for I, Hashem, am holy." And through very careful observance, we can sanctify even the simple act of eating. I've always greatly respected the Native American people and their connection to the land, their respect of the land, and also for the animals and the spirits and the souls of the animals that they eat. And I believe that in Judaism we have these same spiritual practices, but we have lost them because we have lost the art of kosher slaughter. And I do hope that that we can restore and revive this again on a large scale, and reclaim these practices from modern industrial slaughterhouses, even though there's a place and a purpose for them as well. Hey.
Mine, I have a question.
Okay, questions. I'm not sure if I can answer them, but I will try. And if I don't know the answer, I can ask my rabbis.
Sure. It's not a test, don't worry. I heard that when they're doing the Shechitah, if the animal is scared or nervous, it will release a toxin that goes into the blood, and then it goes to the meat itself, to the rest of the animal. That's why the animal has to be kind of in peace, But the thing, what I see is that when they put it on the machine to slaughter, to do the shechitah in the industrial base, you put the animal upside down, Will not that make the animal scared somehow? What do you know about that?
I've seen it. I've seen it done where they hoisted it and they are really freaked out. But I've also seen it with the machine, and it did not look like the animals freaked out. And I've also seen even without the machine, I've seen people performing slaughter, and they would take the legs and turn the animal upside down and lay it down, and I've seen them scared and fight, and I've also seen them calm. So honestly, my personal opinion is that I don't think we can say that it will always do that to the animal. I think it also depends on the animal and what state it's in, and also the relationship that it has to the people that are about to slaughter it. I think all those affect the state of the animal when it's about to be slaughtered.
Okay, thank you.
That's my opinion.
But I want to just say something like about the cow. Like, I don't know. I just feel like in a like if you're on a farm somewhere, and you say you just have you and your couple sons that you're going to help you slaughter this cow. I can't imagine them turning the cow up on its back. You know what I mean? It just seems like it's kind of like not even possible in a way. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't have a cow. I don't have a cow. I don't have a farm. But
no, not on its back, but
it just seems really hard to
laying
do.
down.
Maybe laying down.
Yeah,
laying down on the side or something. Okay, is that what the common way they do? So that seems like more I guess natural, like a normal thing that you would normally do. So, but these machines that like grab the cow, and I mean that's like I said, it's industrialized. It's just like not like a farm environment, kind of thing, right? Anyway, that's all I just wanted to say that.
So that.
All right. Any other questions for my wife?
Yeah, just so they can hear it too. And ask it.
So is it required in Mishnah Torah that the back half of the animal be sold off or discarded or whatever, and only the front part is considered kosher?
No, what's required is that the challah that is properly removed, and because it's very difficult to do. Honestly, I don't know how to do it. So everyone has said to me that it's very difficult to do. If I actually learn it, and my opinion is it's not difficult to do, I will say that. But because I don't know any better, I'm going to go with majority consensus. It doesn't say that you have to discard half the animal. It's just that it's believed that it's very hard to remove the chalev.
The chalev is the fat,
And it's easier. It's the chalev is the fat around the kidneys and the
But
intestines.
I think that what do you call it? What's that thing? The nerve?
Sciatic nerve. That's part
I
of
think
it also.
that's the part that they say is really, really hard. Difficult to do. But the other one, the chalev, probably hard as well, but maybe not as hard.
The sciatic
And
nerve.
that's why they use the whole back half is sold off. Because they do have kosher organs. You go and you can buy kosher liver and stuff. So it must not be that hard to do.
It's done.
It's done. Yeah. But you never see the back half of it.
Yeah.
You never see that part kosher in the kosher butcher or whatever.
Right.
So that's maybe that's more hard to do, so they don't even bother with it, maybe.
Well, most, yeah.
I've heard, this is what I heard, that in Israel, they'll have I guess experts that do it, so they do sell that kind of meat in Israel because it's just more common, and they have experts that do it, and it's not that big of a deal maybe over there, but that's just what I've heard.
Regarding hoisting the animal up to slaughter it. It talks about that in 1 Samuel 14:32, where the people were famished after a battle and they were in a rush, and it said they slaughtered the animals on the ground and ate with the blood. So
where does it say that? I'm sorry. Where does it say that?
First Samuel 14:32.
Oh, okay. That wasn't necessarily a good thing though.
No. They were not supposed to slaughter they're supposed to hoist it up.
To let the blood drain, right?
Yeah. Slaughtering on the ground apparently was according to this anyway, it's not the right thing to do.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, with it laying down?
No, it just said that they were famished after the war and they were in a rush, and so they just cut the throat while they were still on the ground, still not laying down necessarily. But they just didn't hoist it up to drain the blood.
Let the blood drain on the ground too, right? They didn't hoist the animal to let the blood drain. Seems
Yeah, so the people pounced on the spoil and took the sheep and oxen and calves and slaughtered them on the ground, and the people ate them with the blood.
So they're not getting properly drained. Essentially.
They have to be hoisted, yeah. So then they told Saul, "Behold, the people are sinning against the Lord by eating with the blood," and he said, "You have dealt treacherously."
Well, I mean, they don't have
great
to be hoisted,
me here.
but they have
so
to
they,
be.
yeah,
They don't have to be. I mean, hoisted isn't that with rope? They have to be slanted. They have to be on a slanted.
Planted, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think is what it's saying here. Just looking at the Hebrew, I think with all 4 feet on the ground is what you're talking about. They cut the throat with all 4 feet on the ground. Just let it drain like that.
Interesting.
And it wasn't enough.
It needed gravity. Needed more gravity.
Yes. Right.
Mine's on the on our regular nowadays. Do you have a list of the parts that kosher that we should be consuming?
I don't understand the question. What, can you say that again? I don't understand the question.
Okay, they say that we're supposed to eat the front of the what parts of the animal, a cow, can we eat? Because I know that not all parts of the cow can we eat. Do you have names so we can identify when we go to the market?
I can send you a diagram. Tuck roast for sure.
I mean, if you're going to buy kosher meat from the market, if it's labeled kosher, if it's labeled kosher, it won't be anything that we can't eat. If it's not labeled kosher and you're buying it from the market, it was not properly slaughtered, and it's not kosher simply because of the fact it's not slaughtered.
Right. One of the things that I remember a few months ago when I went to the I think Tom Tom's is that they have it says a kosher steak, right? But it really looks very reddish. I mean, I thought it was going to be like a different color, like a pale color, but I don't know. Somehow I was not comfortable buying it, so I still stick to the
So
to
there's always going to be some red liquid still, as long as it's been drained properly and salted, whatever remains is considered kosher.
You could salt it once.
yeah
Yeah.
I think that to be safe, even if it's kosher, we should be salted and then deal with it.
What were you gonna say?
So, okay, I have a saying that blood is actually a different consistency than the red juice that you see at the store. Blood is thicker, right?
Yeah. There's some other, I can't remember what it's called. It slips my mind. There's some other thing that's still left over after the blood's drained.
You got
Okay.
myoglobin and hemoglobin.
Yes,
Hemoglobin
yes.
is blood. Myoglobin is just the protein.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah.
So not everything that we see on the steak bread is blood. Okay, I got it.
All right.
Interesting.
תודה רבה.